Doctors and nurses of Reddit, have you ever witnessed a couple have a child that was obviously not the father's? What happened? Part 1. Had two women deliver on the same unit, same baby daddy. He would go back and forth between rooms. A hospital where it was a med student had a baby born with high drops, which is where a baby gets 2 bad copies of a red blood cell gene, one from each parent. Baby died shortly after birth. Parents came in for genetic counseling, and testing revealed the woman's husband did not carry the alpha thalassemia gene. The couple asked what the chance was another baby of theirs would have this condition. The doctors were honest and told them 0%. They left it at that. Had a mum-to-be who had narrowed the options for baby daddy down to her top 3. She was having a C-section and didn't understand why all 3 potential dads couldn't come into theater. She then asked if we could rotate them through, and maybe she let the one that was there when baby came out be the real daddy. Took all my professionalism to smile politely. A nurse friend of mine told me about helping with a vasectomy when the doctor saw that the patient, a married father of 2 children, was clearly infertile and would have been all his life. Due to the man taking Valium before the local anesthetic, the doctor made the guy come back for a follow-up where he had to explain the man's medical condition to him. No idea what the fallout was. My brother's best friend didn't resemble his father while growing up, so he became more and more suspicious. The father eventually did a DNA test when my brother's friend was 11 or 12 and found out it's not his. The parents split up, with the older daughter, 16, going with a father because she resembled him, so he was sure about her. Poor situation for everyone. The kid lost his father in that situation. He knew nothing different, and it wasn't his fault. Talk about an attachment disorder starting point. In my head, the father still saw the kid as his son, but not his wife as his partner anymore. I can't imagine detaching myself like that after 12 years of caring for a child. I had a doctor that thought my boy wasn't mine because he came out blonde with blue eyes. I'm half native with dark hair and dark green eyes, and my dad is a blonde, blue, green-eyed dude. My wife is a very dark brunette, and her dad is a blonde, blue, or green-eyed dude. It got grandfathered in. He is tested genetically as mine, but the doctor was very, very iffy. Genetics on my dad's side of the family are weird like that too. My dad has black hair, brown eyes. My mom is a green-eyed blonde. My sister was adopted from Asia, but looks more like dad than I do since he has a tan, and my melanin can't get it together. It's to the point where people who know my parents adopted a kid think that I'm the adopted kid, which we all find funnier than some of the other comments we get on the regular. I'm the spitting image of my paternal grandmother, however. I even had her buck teeth. My dad's brother looks the same as my dad, but his son, my cousin, has red hair and blue eyes, just like his mom. This might raise a few eyebrows, but just like me, it got grandfathered in. Apparently, Dad's own grandfather had red hair and blue eyes. When I was a student nurse, there was this one couple. Mother was Asian and husband was white. The husband had a brother, African American. He's adopted, from what I remember. The mother had been in labor for around 12 hours, and they were very excited to see their baby. I remember the father had been pacing my entire shift back and forth in the waiting room. When it came time to mount the mother on the table, he asked the doctor if he could be in the room. He was grinning like a madman. It was a very positive energy. You could almost get completely absorbed by it. The doctor was a nice guy. He let us get him some throwaway scrubs and let him stay in the room. All in all, the actual birthing process was pretty standard. However, when the baby came out, then came the rough part. He was a normal, healthy, half African American boy, around 3 kilograms. I just looked at the baby and then at the father and watched his face go from joy to puzzlement to horror in 10 seconds. The mother called out for a child, and the doctor, being all business, cut and suctioned the baby. I'm pretty sure at that point the father broke because he sort of just stepped back and kept saying, "What the hell?" under his breath. I didn't get to see much of them for the next 2 hours, but I was there when the mother was brought to the room. Her husband and his brother were there as well, and she was talking to them. From what I saw, she was trying to console her husband, and his brother was just trying to hug him. The husband kind of just kept shrugging off his brother's arms and crying into his hands. It was really a tough thing to see, but all in all, it wasn't really as dramatic as you'd expect. Not a doctor, but I worked in adoptions. A couple showed up wanting to discuss adoption. She was so obviously pregnant. The catcher, she and he both insisted that they had never had sex of any kind, only heavy petting, and they assumed some semen had traveled through clothing. I don't know what happened because they never came back. I was a nurse for a urologic surgeon, so lots of vasectomies. Guy came in, pissed off that he had gotten his wife pregnant after his VAS. He had never originally followed up to make sure his swimmers were dead. Doc had him leave a sample to look under the microscope. Went back to the exam room and told him his VAS had been successful. Guy just walked out. Since you didn't mention this, it is important to note that the catch with a new vasectomy is, a man can often start having sex again soon after vasectomy, but another birth control method should be used. This is because some sperm may stay in the vas deferens for some time after surgery. Other birth control should be used until the surgeon tests the semen to be sure there are no sperm left. This is often about 3 months after surgery. Yep, that's why normally men will follow up to make sure their swimmers are dead. His surgery was at least a year old. I'm a doctor, and the story actually involved my colleague. So I'm friends with this guy who we'll call Nut in med school. We're not close friends, but we have some common friends, and we shared some rotations together. And this girl we'll name Mary. Mary was already married at the time and had a 3-year-old daughter. Nut and Mary were close, but Mary got held back because Mary got pregnant, and therefore had to temporarily stop studying. During that time, me and Nut became interns, and Nut began hanging out often with another girl named Belle. Nut and Belle weren't that close or physical with each other, so it came as a surprise when 2 months before internship ended, we found out that Belle was pregnant. Turns out that the two were buddies the entire time. Anyway, they graduated, and eventually Belle gave birth to a baby boy, who looked like Nut's miniature clone. It was as if the baby got nothing out of the mother. At all. Some of us even joked that Nut's seed was just that strong that he doesn't create offspring, he creates clones. Now, Mary eventually got caught up with her studies and entered junior internship, so she had to rotate with some of us. And when she showed us the picture of her baby boy, he also looked exactly like Nut. Note that we knew what Mary's husband looked like, and what Mary's daughter looked like. Her son looked just like Nut. So much that if you placed her son beside Belle's, you could easily mistake them as twins. We did just that. Not sure what happened to them now. I moved to a nearby hospital, but I never really talked to any of the three. But last I heard from Nuts and my mutual friend, Nuts' partner, he claimed he would marry her, and son were left in a city around 4 hours away. Belle worked there. Mary's husband, daughter, and son were in the US. Mary's husband was studying aeronautics or something similar, and Nut and Mary were on duty the same day at the same hospital. No paternity test? No admission? No questioning? Mary's husband doesn't know Nut, or he probably thinks he's a random colleague or something. We had several pictures before during parties, but I'm sure he'll get suspicious once he catches sight of him, preferably while holding his son, or takes a closer look. There were rumors that Mary was ready to leave her real family to be together with Nut, but Belle being pregnant got in the way. No one I asked could confirm it though. Our NICU does not allow paternity testing to be done inpatient, and some of our babies stay with us for 3 to 6 months depending on their gestation. We've had a few long and awkward waits for babies to get discharged before we could find out who the dads are. The 2 most recent cases were babies born at 23 and 25-week gestations, both kids with 3 possible dads. None of the potential dads stayed involved in the 3+ month hospital stays, waiting to find out if they're the father. It's so awkward for the staff. I read an article several years ago about a doctor who was involved in the studies about the Rh blood factor in the late 1930s or early 1940s. The study took place in a New York maternity hospital and was done with married couples. Blood samples were taken from newborn babies, the mother and father, and tested. In about 10% of the cases, the results of the blood test for a couple didn't match what the Rh factor should have been. The doctor went to the mothers alone and asked if the husband was actually the father. Most of the women admitted the husband was not, or he might not be. This was back in the 1930s and 40s with married women. I'm a father who had this happen to him, but it was fine. My wife and I adopted a set of embryos, and my wife birthed them. The genetic parents are Chinese and Korean descendants. My wife and I are European descent. We let the doctors know, and they all agreed to not tell one of the doctors in training, resident or something like that. When he would come in to wiggle the twins' legs and do all the stuff, he would look at my kid's eyes, then nervously glance at me, then do his exam and quickly walk out. I asked him a few questions about why they had such dark hair when my wife and I are lighter haired. He responded about grandparents and recessive genes. Pretty good, future doc. On our second to last day in the hospital, the staff told him, and he was very relieved. He was scheduling a chaplain visit for us. I work in an NICU, and frequently, babies will come down to our units accompanied by their father while mom is still getting stitched up, and it is usually the time when fathers will question us about how to do a paternity test, or they will ask us questions like, "Does this baby look half black to you?" or "Would you say this baby could be mine or not?" We've also had an occasion where Mom has admitted to us Dad isn't baby's father, but we're not legally able to say anything, so we just have to pretend we know nothing, and we'll just submit a social work consult to look into the situation a bit more. Mom has admitted to us Dad isn't baby's father, but we're not legally able to say anything. The way men are treated in this process is appalling. The thread through all these stories seems to be, the Dumbo gets what he gets, unless he wants to push for a test that could potentially destroy his relationship with the mother if his suspicions are wrong. Obligatory, not a doctor, Fremulon, shh. But I know a couple that were very excited to have twins. Baby birthday comes, Mom and Dad are in the delivery room. Baby 1 comes out and it's immediately clear they aren't his. He's white, she's white, the babies are... not. The community was shaking. They're divorced now. My dad told me the story. He was an NCO in the army, and one night he received a call that the wife of one of the soldiers was in the hospital having a baby. His first response was, "So why are you calling me?" It turns out that the wife was 99.9% sure the baby wasn't his, and she needed someone to make sure he didn't go crazy at the hospital. So my dad drives down there, and he finds the soldier trying to push past the doctors into the delivery room. He's screaming that he has a right to be in there, etc. My dad puts his hand on his shoulder, a preface to physically restraining him, and tells him that he can't go in. The guy must have realized that he really wasn't getting in there, because he just sank to his knees, started crying, and kept saying, "I just wanted to see my son being born." It was apparent that he wasn't going to hurt anyone, so they got him to the waiting room and my dad left him thinking, "I just watched the end of someone's marriage." Come Monday morning, the guy comes in with the biggest smile, walking around showing everyone pictures of his black baby. He was white. Of course, they questioned and ribbed him about it, but he would just proudly say, "That's my son." Best case scenario to a messed up situation. I'm not sure how the family is doing now, but it seems like the kid would grow up with a father, or two, who loved him.